So first of all, hi, I'm Paweł, if I don't know every one of you guys. But today I was supposed to prepare a lightning talk, but I kinda didn't. I prepared a presentation, so sorry. When I started to collect the slides, then I realized I can't fit it in like 3 minutes to actually show you guys what model context protocol is. But let's start with a quick knowledge check. No questions, no detailed questions today, but by raise of hand, how many of you guys know what's ChatGPT? Oh, awesome. So have you ever used, and just keep your hand up, it's an exercise. Have you used an LLM over API? Okay. Do you know what LLM tools are, tool codes? No, almost everyone. So have you used LLM tools? Like actually, have you written code that uses LLM tools? Okay. Have you heard about model context protocol? Much more. Have you ever used it? For example, for programming in Cursor or in other solutions? Here, 1, 2, 3, kinda. Okay, so have you ever written an MCP client or server? We have one. Congrats. So at least after today, you will know what an MCP client or server are, and you will be able to write one quite easily, because it's very easy, provided that you know what you're doing. So let's start by taking a very simple idea of an application. You've said or showed that we've all done that. So we have an application and we have an LLM, so we send prompts over API and we go get responses. So as easy as it gets. It wouldn't be my presentation if there was no live demo. So guys, this is a not so helpful assistant. This is what you get when you just use prompt and response. So let's ask, because it actually works, how are you, for example? No progress, no loader. I'm doing great, how are you? Thank you, how can I help? So let's ask, what's the weather in Warsaw? I'm unable to provide real-time weather updates. Of course, you might be using, for example, UI like ChatGPT. If you ask this to ChatGPT UI, you would actually get an answer because it is able to Google or do whatever to get you this current information. But not really simple, but their model is not able to do that. It can answer about weather in 2024. If we ask it another thing, write me a post. Write me a post about AI in work. You've all done that, those who have written some articles on this. So what I got is a response in a simple string. Of course, there is all that I asked, but in order to actually use that, I would have to parse this string, figure out what's its format, if there is a title maybe. So it's a helpful assistant, provided that you have your human eyes to actually figure out what's the answer, and the limit of knowledge cap is beyond 2024. So that's this implementation of an application using an LLM. In here, it's GPT 4.1 mini. So, not the button. So, I've also asked you guys, do you know what the tools are? So you can figure out that if I take this application and provide some additional tools, LLM can be a bit smarter. It won't know more but it will be able to figure that some actions have been made. So in Ruby, because so far we haven't seen much Ruby today, so I really wanted to throw in Ruby using Ruby OpenAI Gem, it would look like this. So when we ask the chat for an answer with a prompt, for example, weather in Warsaw, we can provide a function, weather forecast tool, with description that, well, this is a tool used to forecast the weather, and there is one parameter, location. If we take that with our so far implementation, we'll get a semi-helpful assistant, at least one that can use tools. So if now I ask, what's the weather in Warsaw? It will actually respond with a tool call of weather forecast tool and parameter location Warsaw. We can. There are other tools available for this application. I can also ask to write in a post about gardening. It also has this another tool called create post tool, and with params I get the title and get the body. But there's one big problem that now I have to use my application to take the params from the tools involved, and I actually have to code outside resources. I have to actually code that into my application. If the tool is like this, then do this and that. And if there is another tool, do something else. Also, when I want to have different applications using different resources, what I come up with is an M times N integration problem. It's self-explanatory, but it's far beyond you guys. This N plus 1 is a much bigger number. So if you have M models and N resources, it's actually a lot of work to connect those two in this application. Here comes models. It's an open protocol introduced by Strzalkowski, and it's supposed to standardize how applications provide context to LLMs. In general, it's currently used to allow to easily build AI powered applications with different tools and different resources. What it is about? There's so much stuff about it currently, and most of that is unreadable. Probably because when the standard was first introduced back in 2024, it was really bad. It was kind of like, you know, that JavaScript was built in a week, right? Like the universe. So JavaScript was built in a week, and it's kind of this one as well. So it was bad, and it was just put together to actually be first in the market. And they succeeded, because like year or two afterwards, it is the leading standard of such operations. And however, at the moment it's very much usable, but you have to kind of understand the parts of it. There are two parts that are well described, which is one is the client, one is the server, but there is one another thing. There is a host. So let's go one by one.
Okay.
A host is the application that you run. It may be a Ruby application, it may be a cursor editor, because it's very big on this. So you have an application that has application logic. Within, you have MCP client. MCP client is a connector interface between your host application, your application logic, and some outside MCP server. And there is MCP server that provides capabilities. What capabilities are you saying? Between the MCP client and the MCP server, there is some kind of information transfer. And there are three majors, actually two. The second one evolved into the third one. So first of all, the SPI, which is exactly what you see. It's just connection between processes of the same machine using SPI. It's very efficient and it works great. It's just not for production. If you have your cursor editor and you have some additional local MCP server, you can use SPI. But if you have your application on DigitalOcean or whatever and want to connect with GitHub MCP server, you cannot use it. You have to use some kind of over HTTP protocol. So at first it was servers and events. Now it evolved into streamable HTTP. It's far beyond understanding of those. It's far beyond today's presentation, and I have to learn still. But basically, it's like local over HTTP. That's it. The connection type, transport type between the client and the server. And in the most plain words I was able to put down. Sorry to put so much text in here, but I have to read from something, right? So when you want to have your host application, imagine your Ruby on Rails application that has a client, API-like client, and you want to have use MCP capabilities. So first of all, your host, your application, uses the clients to read all the capabilities from the server. Like, for example, all the tools that you can use. Then the host prompts LLM saying, I want this, and here are the capabilities that you can also use. So, for example, it's the LLM role to figure out what to do. LLM can figure out, okay, I have this 20 tools, I have to use this, this, and this. For example, LLM can figure out the execution of what I'm asked for will take 3 tools. Now, what the LLM does is responses with some response and the list of tools that is supposed to be used. The next part is for the host. It uses its client to use the tools, the first tool that was listed. So, for example, check the weather or write a post. Let's say the prompt said, write 3 posts, right? Or check weather in 3 locations. So the host would use the client to check the weather in the first location, and then it would send another prompt to the LLM, taking all the history so far and adding that response from the first one. Therefore, LLM has the entire context of what has happened from the very beginning and has the response from the first tool. And then the LLM hopefully would respond with, okay, now call the second one. And so on and so forth until the LLM says, it's all. Who's in action? Okay, so when you hear about MCP, it's so easy to just talk about tools, because there are tools were before MCP came, and it became a standard quite some time ago. However, MCP has additional primitives. There are more than this, but those are the ones that are implemented the most likely. So there are tools, and those are those functionalities that you can execute, like create posts, like check the weather. And those are quite well understood. There are 2 more. Resources. Those are, they don't have to be static. Like, it's not like you define them for once in MCP server, but they are data. So when you start your connection with LLM, you can just gather data. It's like kind of like RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So you get some additional context at the very beginning of the interaction. And there are also prompts. So MCP server provides prompts. What are prompts? They are cookbooks, kinda. This is just text. The MCP server can say, ask me like this, send me this prompt, and then I will be able to answer you to the best of my ability. Because guys, we know from our I'm prompt engineering. In here, MCP server says, ask me like this, please. And there's one major difference between all those primitives. Because a prompt is something that MCP server provides, but should be you as a user of this entire application can decide which prompt to use. So if you want to ask about this, you can have a selector of prompts. Another thing is for resources. These should be controlled by the application, so by the host. The host, when it initializes the entire flow, it will gather all the resources from LLMs and decide whether it should use it or not in the implementation. So, for example, if the user selects a prompt, then application can figure out, okay, so if this is this prompt, maybe I should provide some additional files. And the tools, this is probably why they are the most fun, because it's the model, the LLM itself, which is capable of figuring out which tool.
But should tools also change, for example, can they also change if you change the prompt? Or you start it only once time?
So, yes, no and yes. No, but yes.
Because I thought that it's maybe better to use several assistants for several different different tools. For example, one to get in the weather, and the second one to integrate the content.
It's a very long discussion. Let's have it in a second. However, it's not the application which decides which tools are available. It can, because it's the depends on what level. It's the application, the host that provides to the LLM the list of tools. So it first gathers the tools and then provides. If there is a way to filter the tools possible and just provide a subset of tools to LLM, and the host can do that, but from the top. It's not the application which decides which tools are available in general. However, the list of tools, because this was the first question, the first way you ask the question, the list of tools can change. Because the connection between client and server it's not like REST, because REST is supposed to be stateless, and this connection is stateless. So the session, which is governed by the server, can decide that, well, the state in which the connection is can decide that client has a limited access to some tools. So the list of tools can change, in fact, but it's up to the server to decide which tools are available. But let's continue later. We can talk with examples. So we are back in here. We have a whole application, several clients. We can have one client, but the protocol defines as one client for one server. Now, this is the extension of what I've shown so far. So we have a client, we have an MCP server, and now MCP server provides tools, right? Check the weather, write code. For example, if we are about to check the weather, this server can have like check weather tool, but probably it's not the weather station, right? Probably it has some API to go beyond. And maybe this server has some other local capability of a resource, and maybe this server actually has embedded some resources. So this is an example of, let's imagine that the MCP server is actually a Rails server, and it can create hosts inside. So if I ask write me a host, Rails server, it can have this. What's messed up? I will show you an example. So we now come through this program, the one that actually understands you and can understand tools and can actually call servers with the tools. Let me show you how it works. So I can still ask, probably, how are you? And this wouldn't change a thing because there is no tool available for saying how the world is. But if we ask what's the weather in Warsaw, so now we have user called what's the weather in Warsaw, and we have an assistant calling the tool of weather forecast tool with location Warsaw, and this call goes to MCP server. MCP server returns the weather in Warsaw is going to be great. So not only, you might remember that the first assistant said, I don't know what it means. The second assistant said, use this tool. And the third assistant actually called this tool on our behalf and answered about the weather.
And so between the calling the tool and the last answer, the answer from MCP server went to LLM and then back. Right?
Yes.
Straight from.
So the first prompt went to LLM. The LLM answered with the definition of this tool call. The return. So the LLM said, "Hey, call this tool with these parameters." What the application did, the application actually called the MCP client, the MCP server, called this tool with this, and got a response from MCP server. Now the response from MCP server went back to LLM. And this final answer is actually from LLM, not from the. We can. I haven't done that before, so we're gonna be achieving a very light demo. Check the Warsaw and in Łódź. Yeah, I knew. I don't know what's gonna do. Let's see. I should really. Okay. So now there we have it. It always answers it's gonna be great. It's my application. So again, check the weather in Warsaw, check the weather in Łódź. It first called the weather forecast tool for Warsaw, then for Łódź, and as I mentioned, both answers went back to LLM, and the last response is actually a compound response for everything coming from LLM. So LLM didn't know the weather, it decided I have to use this tool to get more context, model context protocol again, okay, MCP. So LLM wanted additional context, and to get that context it used a tool. With the context of those two answers, the weather was going to be great. Similarly, the weather in Łódź was also going to be great. Yes.
Do you know if it's possible to batch of these requests or answers?
Right.
So to save some tokens, we could get two calls from LLM separately, but get also with one call.
Yes, in general it is possible because, as I mentioned, the first action that happens, I call the first tool, get the response, and push back to LLM. And LLM says, now check in Łódź. However, after the initial prompt, I got the response, use the tool for Warsaw, and use the tool for Łódź. I could have used both tools before answering the LLM. These are the results. However, as I understand it, it might be the case that I don't need the second tool. For example, if the first responded with something abnormal, maybe I don't need to call the second tool. And it's probably up to the use case whether you should first call all the tools or answer the LLM one by one.
Okay, will it be client or server?
Hosts. It will be hosts. Okay, guys, but now a more fun example, at least one that I find fun. I have a Ruby on Rails application. You probably seen this example. It's posts, title, and body. I don't have comments, so it's not full. The changes demo. However, this is a normal Ruby on Rails application with a bit of tailwind. I haven't styled it. Right. So I can add another post, and that would be nothing fancy. However, I was able to transform this Ruby on Rails application into an MCP server. It's very simple. I will show you a link where you can read more about it. But it's very easy to extend a Ruby on Rails application to become an MCP server. And this MCP server actually has this tool of creating a post. So you might remember when I first asked about a post about AI taking over the world, I got the answer by explain text. Then I asked about creating a post about gardening, and I got tool code. Now, at least in the definition. Now I can say, write me a post about Ruby Meetup Warsaw. Yeah, let's do it. So what did we get? Calling tool, create post tool with title Ruby Meetup Warsaw. Body, join us for an exciting Ruby Meetup in Warsaw. This is not how we create the invitations, I assure you. And if we go back to this tab and I refresh, now I got this post in here, like that. So in fact, these MCP capabilities can be on the server or beyond the server. However, with this approach, you can make your LLMs be able to use the features of your applications. I will try to wrap up quickly. So there are several libraries that you can use for Ruby to you don't have to. So there will be. So actually, about a week ago, we've gotten the official SDK for Ruby, which was kind of a big deal. It's quite basic at the moment, but people from Shopify are really working on that one. Fast MCP server created by a Frenchman actually. It was featured in Ruby Weekly newsletter weeks ago already, so this topic is very correct. Action MCP, this is the most production-ready implementation, yet quite complex. However, this is a server and a client in one library. And Ruby MCP client, this is the client that I have been using in these examples, and it's actually a Polish org that is Szymon, who has implemented that quite some time ago. It's quite a mature solution, so you can use that for at least for fast MCP and probably
quite fast.
in like a few days you should be also able to use it for actual MCP. Just an example, I won't go very much details into that, but this is a definition of it. Basically, this is a definition of the tool when you use fast MCP server. So in Rails, you actually add a gem and configure it in a very simple way. You add something like this, and your Ruby on Rails application is an MCP server with capabilities. So create post. So this is actually, I just copy pasted from the code. This is all there is. You might see that there is no authorization and authentication. This is a long topic and not fully developed in MCP, but still, this is as for the usability. So there is. I also mentioned that there are resources. Just to have an example, this is the resource definition. buttons as well. And for your resources, you can go to model-protocol.io. You can read the specification. You can read. You can get all the links from there. Ruby AI Builders Discord. If you do anything with Ruby and with AI, please go there. There's such a vivid Discord. I'm not able to keep up with all the conversations for sure. And there is also Model Protocol Discord, and there is Fast MCP Discord as well. And yeah, this is the great way to wrap up the presentation, because this is the link I promised you guys. But if you go to Visuality.pl and you go to our blog, the first 4 articles are about MCP. So just go to our blog and have a read.
Yeah, question. You show just creating a postcard. How about big data? So you know that Israel image of tokens. So have you ever got these image errors, or how have you worked with it?
This is kind of outside of the scope of MCP, right? Because the question was about token limits. Well, this is a problem in any AI LLM interaction. There is no one way to answer. Like summarize and build some contexts. Let's talk over a few, because honestly I can't answer. Right. I haven't built
with it.
Sorry?
Much have you worked with it?
I can't give you any battle tests at the moment. MCP, this is my, let's say, hobby. Let's say, so in this context, let me put it like this. There are so many other actual problems with MCP. For example, when you get the answer from the server, it can actually prompt inject your interaction with LLM. So it's like not only prompt injection from the users, but also from the servers. And now you have to be aware of 2 different angles, or authorization, or keeping the session properly. In MCP realm, I actually haven't had a problem with token interaction with MCP. So in here, I can't give you any battles from the history of production. Yeah, it's like, it's a bleeding edge of technology. It seems that there are better and worse choices for MCP. For example, the protocol itself, JSON. And it shouldn't be. There is no reason for the protocol between the client and the server to be JSON. It could be binary, but it was chosen to be JSON. I know I drifted totally from the initial question, but there are quite a few things to resolve in MCP, but I haven't really seen the token window to be one at the moment. Let's leave it at that. Any questions?
You can prompt like conditionally, like what happens if you type what is the weather in Łódź, and if it's bad, then write me a post. And
can we try?
We can try.
Let's do it.
Because I'm interested if the first pull call will be called and the second not, because in Łódź we all know that it's nice weather.
Let's see if it's bad, because it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm really curious. Going to the weather is expected to be great. If you need information, to ask.
And let's type the same, but with a good weather, maybe.
Yeah. There is no one thing. There is no context between the questions. It's just one string, but it's not production ready ChatGPT. Sorry. Yeah, it did. So this is the answer to your question, Tarek. We, not, well, kinda, at least to my answer to your question, because we couldn't call all the tools at the very beginning. We had to return the code after the first tool to figure out what's the next step.
Yes, but there's a condition here. When you ask the first question about whether in place there weren't a condition. So
We don't know. It's the LLM who knows which knows.
yeah, but my question is, can you ask the LLM to patch them? And if not, then can you queue up the well, no, it will ask the same question, but maybe you can do a batch questions.
Yeah, LLM can return you a bunch of tools, a bunch of required actions. You can for all of them run your own tools, upset your return the answer, and for the answer sent, do they need to run some additional tools or not? And of course, it has the status requires actions.
Okay, so this basically MCP where you can find it. If you use any AI-driven development of the code, you will find like thousands of different MCP servers for that. For example, context 7, which will really make your ID understand your code much better. Or there is an MCP server for your coding, which is targeted for Ruby on Rails as well. It's built on top of fast MCP. And there are MCP servers for GitHub, for Jira, for so many things. Most of them are not great, let's say, they are mostly vibe coded, but there are at least some that at least could be tried. Okay guys, let's continue the discussion without being on the spot, so thank you very much.